Hello, hello, hello. Today we are talking about the invisible tax. You know, that work that nobody sees, nobody counts, and everybody somehow expects you to keep doing. The research behind this is equal parts fascinating and absolutely enraging, so strap in. Welcome back to Unshakable Her, helping ambitious women who are constantly second-guessing themselves to build the daily habits that compound into unshakable confidence. I'm Caroline Esterson and I'm in your corner. Today it's Wednesday, which means it's time for the science of what's holding you back. Because frankly, just believing yourself isn't going to get you the promotion, the pay rise, or the influence. But understanding what's actually happening in your head and why turns what's wrong with me into, that's what's happening. That's how unshakable confidence gets built. Let's go. So today is Wednesday, which means we're getting into the science. If you listened to Monday's episode, you met Jade. You felt her frustration. You probably recognized a bit of yourself in her. And if you didn't, you definitely recognized someone you know. If you didn't get the chance to listen yet, you might want to go back for the full story. Or if you want to just crack on, here's what you need to know. Jade is the person every team has. And if they don't, things just fall apart. She holds everything together, makes sure everyone is okay. And by the way, gets very little credit for any of it. And I left you with this week's unspoken rule. Whoever says yes first gets asked again forever. Now, today, we're going to find out why Jade's frustration is completely real, why this is not a confidence problem or a communication problem or any of the other things she's been quietly told it is. So here's what you're getting today. You'll find out what non-promotable tasks actually are and get the research that proves women carry a disproportionate load of them. You'll understand emotional labour, what it costs you, why it's expected of you, and why nobody put it in your job description. And you're going to walk away with the language and the evidence to name what's happening to you, which, as you all know, is the first step to doing something about it. Let's go. The science bit, because facts beat fear every time. Right, I want to introduce you to a phrase that is going to reframe the way you think about your work. It's not particularly sexy, I'll be honest with you. It sounds like something you'd find buried in an HR policy document somewhere. But stay with me, because once you hear what it means, you will see it absolutely everywhere. The phrase is non-promotable tasks. Sound familiar? Researchers Linda Babcock, Maria Ricaldi, Lise Vesterland and Laurie Weingart spent years studying this. What they found out was both completely obvious and somehow still shocking to see laid out in black and white. Non-promotable tasks are work that benefits the organisation but don't contribute to your career advancement. There's things like mentoring junior colleagues, organising social events, taking meeting notes, serving on committees nobody else wants to be on, covering for absent colleagues, answering questions that aren't technically your job to answer. Someone's got to do this work, don't they? Without it, frankly, teams just fall apart. Culture collapses, new people flounder, and clients walk. But this work doesn't get you promoted. It doesn't get you a raise. And in many organisations, it doesn't even get you a thank you. Now, what do you think the research says about who does this work? What do you reckon? Yep, it's women. Disproportionately, significantly, persistently, women. Babcock and her team ran study after study after study. They found that women are more likely to be asked to take on non-promotable tasks, more likely to say yes when asked, and more likely to volunteer when nobody else steps up. And there's something in that last point that I think is so important. It's not just that women say yes when asked. It's that in a room where nobody volunteers, women are significantly more likely to be the ones to step in. They feel that gap. They feel the discomfort of something going undone, and they just have to fill it. Have you ever been in that position? I know I have many times. On one interview I did for my book, there was a woman, she was an HR director, And it was automatically assumed that she would be the one who gets the coffee ready before the board meeting and the person who takes the notes. That was until one day she took a stand. Boy, that was interesting. But you know what? That's for a whole other story. And critically, when a woman does say no, like the person I've just explained, people are more likely to react negatively, to see it as cold or unhelpful or difficult. When a man says no, it's fine. He's busy. He's focused. So women say yes more, are asked more, and pay more. That's the tax. Now, I want to bring in another piece of research here because there's a second layer that sits underneath the non-promotable task research, and it's called emotional labour. This term was coined by sociologist Arlie Hochschild back in 1983. Yeah, we've been at this for a while. And it was represented in her book called The Managed Heart. She was studying flight attendants and bill collectors, and what she identified was the work of managing your feelings in order to fulfill the emotional requirements of a role. And in those studies, Hochschild wasn't just talking about being in customer-facing roles. She was talking about the way that certain workers, and the research has consistently shown that these workers are disproportionately women, are expected to perform warmth, manage other people's emotions, absorb frustration, maintain harmony, and make others feel good as part of their job. Not listed on the job description, not reflected in their pay grade, just assumed, baked in, part of the deal. Now let's take this into a corporate office, and you have women who are expected implicitly, often without a single word being said, to be the emotional infrastructure of the team, to notice when someone's struggling, to keep the peace, to smooth over the conflict the manager doesn't want to deal with, to make the new person feel included, to make the team feel like a team. All of this is invisible work, and all of this is taxed. And here's the part that doesn't get talked enough about. Hochschild also found that sustaining emotional labour over a long period of time has a deeper cost than just exhaustion. When you spend years managing your feelings to meet other people's needs, you can start to lose your grip on what you actually feel. Your own emotional signals get quieter. You become so practiced at being the calm, warm, enthusiastic person that you stop being sure where the performance ends and you begin. Whoa, that's big. It's not a small thing. That is tax getting really personal. Think about the implications of that. There's one final piece of research I want to bring in now, and it's from Babcock and her colleagues again. Specifically, the work they did that eventually became their book, The No Club, which is a brilliant read if you want to go deeper. I'll pop a link in the show notes for you. They found that women in their study were spending on average significantly more time on non-promotable work than their male counterparts. We're not talking minutes here. We're talking hours per week. Now, I want you to do some maths for me for a second. Even at a conservative estimate of 2 or 3 hours of non-promotable work a week, this adds up to over 100 hours a year. Over 5 years, that's close to 3 full working weeks of your life invested in work that will never appear on your CV, never show up in a promotion discussion, and frankly, just not be counted. While someone else is spending those same hours on the work that will be counted. So you have a situation here where the same qualities that make someone excellent, things like conscientiousness, care, sensitivity to others, reliability, are being systematically exploited by organisations that have no mechanism for recognising or redistributing this work fairly. That's not a personal failure, is it? That is actually institutional design. Sit with that phrase for a moment. Institutional design. It's not a gap in your ambition. It's not something you could have fixed by being louder or pushier or more strategic in your 20s. It's a design choice made by organisations, often without conscious intent, but a choice nonetheless, built into their frameworks, the review processes, the unwritten expectations of who does what and who gets the credit for it. Right. Not the club, just bad processes. The system's the problem, not you. Let's fix it for you and the next one in. So here's what organisations could do tomorrow, genuinely, immediately, that would begin to address this. Audit your meeting notes. Who's taking them? Rotate the responsibility formally. Look at your mentoring and induction loads. Who's doing them? Is it reflected in anyone's objectives? Track committee memberships. Who's serving on the stuff nobody wants to serve on? Is that balanced? Make the invisible work visible in your performance frameworks. Give it a name, give it weight, and give it recognition. I want you to notice something about that list. It doesn't require a consultant, a budget, a task force, or a 2-day away day to design it. It just requires someone to actually look. It's not complicated. It's a choice. And most organisations haven't made it. Now, here's where I want to be honest with you about something, because there is a layer to this that career advice, including this podcast, doesn't always acknowledge loudly enough. A lot of the guidance out there will tell you to embrace a zigzaggy career, take on varied work, stretch yourself sideways, cover across teams, build transferable skills, and get exposure to different parts of the business. And I still believe that genuinely. But here's the distinction that matters and that almost nobody makes clear enough. There is a difference between zigzagging into visible stretch work, a cross-functional project, a secondment leading something new, and zigzagging into invisible support work, covering, coordinating, informal mentoring, holding things together behind the scenes. Both are zigzaggy, but only one of them shows up anywhere that counts. The advice to stretch yourself sideways only works if what you're stretching into is actually visible to the people who make decisions about your career. If it's not, you're not building a portfolio, you're just accumulating more invisible tax. And here's the truth about the work that Jade shared with you on Monday's episode. Every single bit of it, those are real skills. Stepping into that client call with half the information and holding the relationship together, that's stakeholder management under pressure. Sitting with Tom and translating the unwritten rules of the team, that's knowledge transfer and onboarding. Noticing someone struggling before anyone else did and knowing how to show up for them, that's emotional intelligence and leadership. Fixing the data, improving the report, quietly raising the standard of the team's output for 18 months, that's quality assurance and communication. These are not soft skills. They're not nice to haves. These are the skills organizations say that they are desperate for when they write job descriptions and scratch their heads in leadership away days, wondering why nobody seems to have them. Jade has them. You have them in abundance. The problem is not the skills. The problem that everyone around her is too busy, too siloed, and too focused on their own deliverables to connect the dots themselves. Nobody's sitting there thinking, Jade stepped in on that client call. That tells me something significant about her under pressure. Nobody's adding it up. The dots do exist, but nobody's drawing the lines between them. And that is the system failure. Organizations have not built the mechanisms to see this work. And there it is. It's not the club, it's just bad processes. But while those processes stay broken, the invisible needs to be made visible. And right now, in most workplaces, that job falls to you. Not because it should, because it does. And on Friday, we're going to talk about how. So that's Wednesday done. Heavy? A little bit? Important? Absolutely. Here's what I want to leave you with. The research does not describe a group of women who lack ambition, confidence, or strategic thinking. It describes a group of women who are excellent and whose excellence is being quietly redirected into work that costs them and counts for nothing. It's not a you problem, but it's going to need a you solution. So that's Wednesday's science episode complete, where we found out what non-promotable tasks actually are and got the research that proves women carry a disproportionate load of them. You now understand what emotional labour actually is, what it costs you, why it's expected of you, and why nobody put it in your job description. And you're leaving with the language and the evidence to name what's happening to you, which is the first step of doing something about it. Now it's over to you. What are you going to do with all of this? Friday, we're finishing this trilogy on a note of something a lot more energizing, because the answer to being taxed isn't raging, it's reclaiming. And I found a song that does exactly that. That's it for today. Before you go, if something in this episode made you think, that's why I do that, hit follow wherever you're listening, because that moment of recognition, that's where Unshakable starts. Remember, I'm in your corner. See you Friday.